Are we back? Hello? Everything
Would it
back
be
and
the
up and
same? No,
good?
it wouldn't be.
No, not on YouTube, because God forbid YouTube be normal and let me go back to a stream,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah. I think I need to make, maybe not. Let's see if Substack shows back up or if I need to make a new Substack. I guess I'll do that right now. That's fun. While everyone's trickling back in. Uh, that's weird. Big Poppy Boo. View. Okay, that's working. Substack's off. Rumble should be working. Cool, my power like browned out for a second and everything died. Um, so I had to figure that out. But anyway, Substack, where is it at? Alert. Beep up. Well, we brought stories. Are people back yet?
No.
Um, they're not back yet. Oh, what take them so long? I got a whole stream back up. You know. Let's do this. Live video, create. And then here. Mm-hmm. Put the title in. No, go live with stream key. That's what I want. Uh, Here. Up. Generate stream key. Copy stream key. Go back to restream. Put it in. Yay, technical difficulties are the best. I love them so much. Okay, we're good. I think. I think we did it. Um, cool. YouTube. I don't know why it takes an hour for YouTube to load chat too. I don't know if it does that for anyone else, but it does it to me. All right. You ready to get started again?
Sure.
Cool. What stories you
Um.
bring here, Bert?
Uh. So World Cup is over, thank God. Um. So we've been talking a little bit about FIFA. Not really, but kind of around FIFA the last week or two. We're going to get into an article written by the Black Agenda Report regarding the contradictions of FIFA. Obviously, the World Cup is meant to be like seemingly a time of togetherness and like sport and like community and all the things. And meanwhile, it's kind of this year, but you can argue for the whole organization or the whole thing surrounding FIFA slash the World Cup, surrounded, by imperialism, colonialism, all the things. So kind of contradictions of what the tournament should be about and kind of the situations surrounding that are not necessarily leading into that
Yeah.
togetherness and all that kind of bullshit. So we'll get into those contradictions, especially regarding some countries in the global south that did make it into the tournament this year. Uh, and then later on tonight, Pentagon has been hiding some shit in
Yep.
terms of actual deaths or injuries among our military who are in Iran right now that for reasons we kind of know that they're kind of hiding. So that's why Peg stuff is there. So we'll get into that later. And then what did you bring?
Well, I brought a. We've been talking about Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. Me and Indy have talked about it. We've talked about it on this show before. Um, his wife put out a letter to the world that I figured we would read. Seeing as how I'm sure not a lot of other places are going to read it. But I also brought a couple of articles on this new McCarthyism that has shown up again, this time in the Trump administration. We're trying to fight the commies on U.S. soil again, right? So, nothing like a bit of, Russia phobia and commie phobia. We're going to get into it. And I talked earlier about it. Your guy Kwame Ture is involved in this, oddly enough. So I'll leave that for a surprise later.
Okay.
But that's in there. So that's what I brought. But you ready to get started?
Yep. But before we do, as per usual, YouTube suppresses us in the algorithm because our stories / clips are not favorable to the algorithm / AdSense. So in order to support us, you can give via YouTube, but they will take 30% of your money. We don't want you doing that. To ensure that all of your money goes directly towards the network, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat and live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and a Ko-fi link will pop up. And you can click on it and give as little as much as you want. $1 helps, seriously. It means a lot. It helps us to pay for the programs that we use in order to produce this show and other shows on the network. So if you're able to help us out financially, that would be awesome. Don't feel like you are under obligation to. We understand a lot of you might be struggling financially, so do what you can to take care of yourselves first before you help us. But if you do, thanks. Those of you who do give at any point, you'll be on our wall of fame. Those of you in the beige, brown, whatever color you want to call it, you consider our MVPs. Your name will be featured in the closing credits of the show. And if you want to give other than Ko-fi, you can give via PayPal, Cash App, Substack, or Patreon, especially if you want to give monthly. And as always, those links are in the description below. And as always, the best way you can help us, if financially is kind of tough, is the free way is to like, comment, and share our content. So yeah, we thank you guys.
Thank you.
We do want to also say right now we will be on. Well, I'm going on vacation for the next couple of weeks, so this will be our last live show until later on in August.
Yep.
When I'll be back. So Reef has a choice of whether he wants to do
Some clip shows, find a person to do it with, do it by my own. Yeah.
It's up to him. So, but we'll put out clips of this show, and then you have a backlog of shorts to put up as well.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I feel like I should do one of stuff that people should have watched and didn't,
Sure.
That'd be a good one. But anyway, to our first story, Boy Wonder.
Yep. So the World Cup is over, thank God. We don't have to worry about that for another 4 years.
Yeah.
But I saw this clip that I'll play in a second on Twitter on Monday, I think it was, and I had to laugh. Because this is Cash Money Patel.
Okay.
Just watch it, and you'll just see how ridiculous this is. Go ahead.
With the crowning of the FIFA 2026 World Cup champion, the FBI blows the final whistle on the largest special security event ever held in the United States. I'm proud to say it ended without any major security issues, and that wasn't by accident. It's thanks to unprecedented planning and the tireless efforts of the men and women of the FBI, as well as our federal, state, local, and international partners. Consider these numbers. 100.
I would like to not consider the numbers.
104 games in 39 days across 11 U.S. host cities and 5 international host cities. 40 base camps with hotels and practice facilities. More than 6.5 million spectators, including fans from more than 150 countries, doubling the previous World Cup attendance record. This FBI was up to the challenge. We dedicated almost 4,000 field personnel, almost 800 headquarters, and
What the fuck was there? Where was this guy at FIFA? Where was fucking bomb unit man? Like, I didn't see his ass out there.
59 Homeland Security Task Forces, 70 FBI personnel at our International Police Cooperation Center, where 46 countries represented at the FBI assembled Joint Operations Center, 400 personnel at the FBI's Intelligence Coordination Center. With 53 field offices engaged, we seized more than 700 drones operating illegally near venues. Working with the historic White House FIFA task force stood up by President Trump, we ran down criminal tips, investigated swatting incidents, hoax bomb threats, and online scams. It's the most extensive level of support the FBI has ever provided for a global sporting event. All this while we celebrated our nation's 250th birthday with major events in cities around the country that drew massive crowds of their own. We did what we do best, keep the American people safe and catch the bad guys. In stadiums, at fairgrounds, on the streets, and across borders, together we showed the world the strength of America and the...
Oh God, I'm sure the rest of the world is aware of our quote-unquote strength. I'm sure they've seen the bomb craters. You know?
I just feel like this is a little much for the FBI director to make. As funny as it was, I'm just like, dude, you want a cookie for doing your job, sir? This is kind of what I saw it as. It's like, if you have to say, we did a good job. Didn't we do a good job? I'm like, that makes me think you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Like,
right.
But doing the bare minimum, like, or not even the bare minimum, but doing what you're supposed to do deserves this kind of pomp and circumstance. Okay, sir. But I'm sure that's just kind of giving the shit behind Cash Patel right now. I'm sure he's trying to like air his graces a little bit and kind of being like, see, I'm actually kind of competent at my job. See. And like, meanwhile, all the bullshit surrounding
you know what it seems like? This guy.
Thank you.
It's like what Michael Scott would do, like to try to save his gig. You know, he'd put up an entire flowery thing of how we had the most paper sales of anything in any Dunder Mifflin outlet. Like, that's exactly what it seems like to me. The music and everything, which probably got us copyrighted. I'm sure I'll delete the fucking music out of it in the edit. Like, we don't monetize our FYI. We don't monetize the streams just for this purpose. You know, like,
right.
But you know, I make sure to like take the music out in the edit for the clips, like, because God forbid we under fair use play anything that someone might feel like they are owed money to. God forbid. The 5 cents that this video makes. Oh, hey, thanks. Jack's Page giving us $5. Speaking of monetization, appreciate you, Jax. You've been killing it. Yeah, it's just that fucking dude's such a fucking stooge, a caricature of a human being. You know?
Well, apologies in advance for the extra work you have to do.
You're all right. It's one button. It's fine. It's literally I hit a one switch. It takes me nothing.
Right, but I thought, regardless, I did think it was just as well I did play that. Because obviously Patel gave this glowing like praise in terms of how well he did in terms of like the World Cup and like the monitoring and all of that. So let's shift a little bit to some of the contradictions of FIFA and the World Cup in terms of. There's quite a bit in the article, but I think a lot of it will make sense, especially if you've followed us for a while, fam. You probably
I'm trying to remember. Do you remember when we talked about India hiding its pores?
Yes.
Was that for FIFA? That was for FIFA, wasn't it? Okay.
No, that was some. It might
some
have been
other sporting events. G20 summit.
No, it was some type of world summit.
That was it. Feels like it was. That's something FIFA would have them do. Hey, could you hide your pores for us? Right.
I'm sure that's going to be happening in the Olympics, since that's going to be in LA.
FIFA's been just to start off. FIFA has been known to be one of the most corrupt sporting, like, connected to every corrupt individual ever who's ever wanted to strong arm anyone for money, has been involved with FIFA at one point or time. So was it previous Argentina guy, Madalena? Trying to remember his name. One of the ones admitted to, like, they had drugged the Brazilian team, like, the time they won. They, like, admitted to, like, drugging their water supply of Brazil for a FIFA World Cup. Someone in chat will remind me. But anyway, you brought this from Black Agenda Report?
Yep, this is written by Djibo Sobukwe. Hopefully that's how he pronounces his name.
Yeah.
Where he writes FIFA World Cup sports and the contradictions of the US/EU colonial hegemony. So Djibo writes, football/soccer is a world sport of the poor and the working class, although at its highest levels, it is, like all sports, controlled by the ruling classes. It is played in the alleys of Sao Paulo and the dirt fields in Accra. It is clearly the most popular sport in the world. It therefore offers great opportunities to learn about various countries and people. Because it is such an international working class sport, it offers opportunities for people from different countries and backgrounds to come together and learn from each other, all while they have the love of the game in common. It offers a time of celebration and national pride. Although football/soccer in the US reportedly had an original history of more working class roots, this apparently changed in the 1960s, where it clearly became an elite suburban sport and far less popular than the big three: United States football, basketball, and baseball. This year's World Cup is unique in several ways. It is the first time it allowed up to 48 teams to qualify and play in 3 different countries at the same time: the US, Mexico, and Canada. It's also the richest. Fédération Internationale de Football Association, or FIFA, World Cup ever, with FIFA's projected revenue at $13 billion and increasing the total to a record of $871 million. It followed.
Like, by the way, in 2005, Argentinian soccer star Maradona confessed that his team spiked with tranquilizers the water of the Brazil team during the 1990 World Cup. So, lovely. Argentina just perfect team, you know. Anyway, continue.
It follows that this World Cup therefore had the highest ticket prices out of the reach for the masses of people. This World Cup is also the first time that each team earns $12.5 million just to qualifying, and an additional $11 million for those teams that make it out of the first round of group play. This is also the first time 10 African teams qualify for the World Cup, and the first time 9 of them made it through the knockout round of 32, which means those teams earned an additional $11 million each. For many players and their families, this is a great opportunity to increase their income dramatically, since many, although not all, do not make huge salaries and come from working class families. This is quite an accomplishment. Paradoxically, international sporting events also provide an excellent opportunity for protest statements to remind people that all is not well in the world, some of which we highlight here. Like all sports and cultural entertainment, football/soccer does not escape the influence of politics and race-class contradictions. FIFA and its World Cup structure claimed to be politically neutral has never been true since its founding. FIFA was founded in Paris in 1904 by colonial powers and therefore always served colonial interests. The first FIFA World Cup tournament was hosted by Uruguay in 1930. The second World Cup was hosted in 1934 by the fascist Mussolini of Italy, the year before Italy attacked Ethiopia starting World War II. Like the NBA, NFL, and at National League Baseball, was founded by US/EU colonial imperialist big capital. So it's no surprise that they've been controlled, corrupted, and exploitive since the beginning. With FIFA's projected revenue at $13 billion, it should surprise no one that as long as there is big money involved in a world dominated by capitalism, it will never be politically neutral and will always favor the ruling classes. It will just reflect the same racist, classist contradictions as its parent countries, US/EU imperialism and Zionism. If anyone still thought that FIFA was unbiased and politically neutral, this myth should have been smashed when FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, awarded Donald Trump a Peace Prize on December 5th, 2025, for allegedly bringing peace to the world, including between Israel and Palestine, no less. Not to mention the unprecedented intervention by the host country's president, Donald Trump, with Gianni Infantino insisting on reversing a red card penalty to benefit the U.S. team, which ultimately they lost anyway. So,
yep,
it didn't matter. Sports washing is the practice of using sporting events to improve the reputation of a government or company or individual by distracting from unethical conduct or controversies. This practice is not new to US/EU imperialism. Colonial racist capitalism always co-opts its cultural products to serve its financial and ideological interests. In recent years, there are new sub-imperialist powers joining the sports washing. Increasingly significant influence by big capital come from the Arab Gulf states, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have had a large influence in international sports in recent decades.
Yes, they have, dude. The Saudi crown prince been buying up everything. Dude, they're buying indoor golf. Like, they're buying up any sport they can. Strongmen bought that. Fighting bought that. Wrestling bought that. Like, everything. Own all the sports. Gotta catch them all. You know? Like,
these states, aside from sponsoring proxy wars, continue to have a malignant neo-colonial influence in Africa and Western Asia. The Gulf Arab states already own at least half dozen top-tier European football/soccer teams worth hundreds of millions. If one ever wonders why it now also says Fly Emirates on top of all NBA backboards and the NBA referees are now required to wear jerseys with an Emirates sign prominently displayed, it is a testament to this influence. We have to wonder if it's a matter of time before the NBA finals or which ticket prices are just as expensive as the World Cup are played in Dubai. I'm sure that's coming.
Yep.
That's coming. Football/soccer is a part of the culture of many global South countries, especially in Africa, the Caribbean, and Central and South America, where it is the number one sport played and enjoyed by the poor and working class masses. Cuba and Puerto Rico are exceptions in the Caribbean, and because of the history of U.S. colonialism, they have gained popularity and expertise in baseball. The colonial legacy also explains why we increasingly see people from former European colonies in Africa, the Caribbean, and Central and South America, many of whom now have 3 and 4 generations born in these European countries. Most of the African-descended players on the European teams were born and grew up in Europe. Even many of the players from African and Caribbean teams were born or grew up in Europe. For example, in the only 2 Caribbean teams to qualify, Haiti and Curacao, most of their players were born in France and the Netherlands, respectively. These players made a conscious decision to play for the country of their parents or grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to note, for example, that the Netherlands team was composed of mostly of players of African descent, most of whom have family ties to former Dutch Caribbean
Dutchies,
colonies such as Suriname,
Suriname. Yep.
Curacao, and Aruba. While it's quite remarkable that the Dutch decided to field a team with so many black faces, the racist backlash they received on social media after some of them missed penalty kicks, causing their loss to Morocco, shows that the fight against racism in many European countries must continue. Haiti qualified for the World Cup on a historical date, November 18th, the Bataille de Verrières Day. No, I pronounced that wrong, and I speak French. The last major battle of the Haitian Revolution, and resulted in Haiti's first qualification in 52 years. According to reports, the Haitian masses went wild with national pride and celebration, as well as the Curacao and Cape Verde teams, of which it was their first time qualifying in the World Cup. Similarly, the qualification of a team went from the Democratic Republic of Congo was their first time in 52 years, and also a reason for the DRC masses to celebrate a time of national pride with an element of protest. In spite of FIFA's hypocrisy of claiming to be politically neutral, sports over politics, we highlight just a few of the many examples of its duplicity. On one hand, FIFA and the Union of European Football Associations banned Russia from the 2022 and 2026 World Cups due to its invasion of Ukraine. On the other hand, it completely contradicts itself and turns a blind eye when Israel was permitted to play in the qualifying rounds for the World Cup in spite of the genocide committed against Palestinian people.
Yep.
And UEAF, FA,
Yep.
also turned a deaf ear to calls from UN experts to ban Israel from the genocide of Palestinians. Additionally, it must be said that not only did the Zionist entity participate in World Cup qualifiers, reports indicate that over the past 2 years, but the Israel army has also killed some 889 Palestinian athletes, including at least 420 football. You reported on this before.
Yeah, we've covered some of it. I mean, early in the thing when it was like hadn't killed quite as many.
Right.
But to the Haiti thing, I don't know if you knew what they were alluding to. The Haiti jersey ban.
Oh, I'm going into that.
Okay, like with this scene. I just want to make sure we had a photo.
We're going to get to that.
Cool.
So hold on to that.
Yes, sir.
The fact that the U.S. is the number one enabler of Israel's genocidal crimes and that it launched an unprovoked war against Iran 3 months before the start of the World Cup should be more than enough reason for the ban to extend to the U.S. as well. However, these international organizations are all comprised and co-opted by Western imperialism.
Yep.
Thankfully, where there is oppression, there is resistance, and there were examples of protest and resistance in the course of this World Cup. So just to kind of go what you were about to get to, in the World Cup, both Haitian and DRC teams showed symbolic expressions of militant protest reminiscent of the Black Power fist displayed by John Carlos and Tommy Smith at the 1968 Olympics. The Haitian team initially had a team jersey depicting the Haitian Revolution. So if you, I'm not sure if you can zoom in this picture. Yeah, so you could see that picture of them holding the flag there in the corner. But this was ultimately barred by FIFA. The International Olympic Committee took the same action against Haiti's team uniform during the 2026 Winter Games. So, by the way, you can still get these jerseys like online, like on Etsy and other places, if you want this flag. But as we said, FIFA did not commission them because reasons. So, but you could still get them if you desire to get one. The DRC, like Haiti, had not qualified in 52 years, so it's quite an achievement to be able to participate and play in 2026, also generating national pride for DR Congo nationals. The militant pride of DR Congo was symbolized by no one better than Mr. Michel Nukuya Mulondinga, also known as Lumunda Vea, Lumunda Lives. Mr.
Imboladinga?
Obolandinga started his support for DR Congo's team during the African Cup of Nations games that started in December of 2025, when he would dress up and stand for 90 minutes in statue-like position, symbolizing Africa's great colonial hero Patrice Lumumba. He became the spiritual symbol of the team, giving them political spiritual inspiration into continuing the struggle.
I saw this guy. DRC
researcher, writer, and member of Tricontinental Makambe Musa Bulu explains it best in an interview that he did with Breakthrough News. So actually, we'll watch about 2 minutes of that where he describes this. Just the significance of Congo being in the World Cup.
What's happening in the World Cup? You know, there is a boycott in many corners around the world of what's happening with the World Cup. But in DRC at the moment, this World Cup means a lot to the Congolese people. For example, to put that in context, the last time we went to the World Cup was in 1974. So many Congolese are watching this game, not for political reasons, right? But from the spirit that the world has counted us out. Right? If you watch the Portugal game, everyone knew that Portugal is going to win, but that's not what took place. But what unfolded, you could see that a united Congolese, just similarly to what happened during Joseph Kabila time, that a sports game is uniting people to demand more for the government. And many people, in a few days, they'll be able to see the gentleman that we call Lumumba there, the Congolese super fan, who dresses like Lumumba, who stands for the entire game. And for us, it means a lot to have Lumumba standing in a US game, demanding that the assassination of 1961, that it being known and that the American people held accountable for the assassination of Lumumba. So this World Cup for us has two meanings. One, the spirit of Lumumba being revived amongst the players, amongst the fans, and two, that will continue to push our government in DRC to do the right thing by us, where the will of the Congolese people is heard, and that they do not change the constitution just for their own gains, but they look much more forward to the future where we control our own affairs, our land, and resources.
And resources, they said in the end. So
yeah.
Yep.
Collin, have you ever heard of the medieval tourney? Like a tourney in medieval times? Like, I mean, it's what they would do, like jousting and all that stuff at.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I wrote in an article not that long ago in regards to like UFC and a similar, mixed martial arts in general, especially when the Dagestanis trying to fight for Palestine and whatnot, that like these sporting events, while completely controlled, right, allows for host countries to send, envoys, essentially, their athletes, right, to showcase, mainly their military prowess, right? That's what these are allegories for, right? Like, if you can create a good athlete, you can create a good soldier. That's the idea. That's why Russia and the U.S. have had such, like, heated sports rivalries forever, right?
Right.
But that's what this kind of stuff reminds me of like, usually it's like a lot of like, the transhumanist stuff where it's, how many PEDs, how much of that can we get away with? How can we create perfect little human specimens for ourselves and, send them to showcase their athletic ability? But, they're definitely doing that in the Olympics and here and in most other sports. But just interesting allegories with that and how that stuff was used in medieval times amongst feudal lords. Because now the feudal lords are, not much different, So,
yeah.
But anyway, as you were saying,
have a couple more slides here.
I'm getting to it. I got to deal with this new YouTube where I can't pause properly. There we go.
We would be remiss if we didn't highlight the courageous team of Iran who felt that it was important to them to participate in spite of the many unfair obstacles they were subject to by the US government. The fact that they were prohibited from bringing their full support staff put them at a disadvantage. Also, they were banned from staying in the US in between games, which required them to fly back and forth to Mexico, causing undue exhaustion. The Iranian team also made a political statement using the symbol of a child's book bag with the Iranian flag and the number 168, representing the number of children killed when the US bombed the girls' school in Manab, Iran in February this year.
Yeah.
The book bag was carried by the players in a game against Nigeria before the World Cup, but when the team arrived in Mexico to start their World Cup journey, they all wore lapel pins with the number 168. So you could see on this player here, if you zoom in,
Yeah.
it's kind of tiny, but it's 168 on
Yeah.
that. Kind of classy.
Yeah.
Similarly, the two smallest countries in the competition, Curacao and Cabo Verde, qualified for the first time. In the case of Curacao, most of the team was born in the Netherlands, the colonizing country. In the
Yeah.
case of Cabo Verde, the teams that surprised everyone due to their quality of play. Most players were born in the Netherlands as well as Portugal, the colonizing country. As the World Cup was over now, but at the time of this segment, it will likely be remembered for many of the firsts, as well as how teams performed and which team wins, Spain. However, learning and sharing the lessons of how imperialism attempts to co-opt culture, in this case sports, should be a priority. FIFA and US/Zionist imperialism sought to prevent the masses from expressing their own politics of resistance by insisting on the banning of any political statements. World Cup 2026 teaches us that mega sporting events have always been and continue to be an arena for class struggle, political education, and protest in spite of the rules and hypocrisy of the ruling class. And this actually kind of reminds me, all of this, what we talked about, just to give a more recent example about the Super Bowl this past year with Bad Bunny, you know, because obviously watching it, there were a lot of, it was political, sure,
Yeah.
but you know, it was kind of mired within the context of class, given that, as I mentioned back then, Bad Bunny was well, the problem that I had at least was that Bad Bunny refused to play any concerts in the US due to what was happening with ICE. But he made the decision to play the Super Bowl, which was based in the US. And then pretty much all of his concerts, especially later in the year and now, are in Europe right now. So who will have the money to fly to Europe, book a hotel, travel to his concert and all the things and buy the ticket? You know, that's not going to be that many people who will be able to go, especially given this economy right now. So, and then I believe that I think he has a deal with Zara, which has some
Zionist
Israeli
ties.
Zionist connections.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of weirdness around him. But so obviously, given all of that, this shouldn't come surprising to you all, like, you know, the World Cup. And we kind of talked about this over the last couple of weeks, especially with Argentina last week, just given like the corruption that does exist within FIFA. That being said, I think there's a still good article to read to kind of see that there were little nuggets of protests that may not be mentioned ever in mainstream media that are mentioned, at least in this article. So shout out to the author for writing this and kind of explaining this to you all, because I actually didn't know about most of this because I really wasn't watching the World Cup like that. But even like when Spain won, what I did see online was that there, I forgot the name of their star player, was waving a Palestinian flag, I guess, on their parade in Barcelona. I believe it was in Barcelona or Madrid, depending where
Barcelona.
they had this, depending where they had their celebration. So, so there were little nuggets of resistance / protests that
Yeah.
were happening. that we wouldn't be privy to, but it's good that at least on this show, they will kind of mention. So just kind of know that there were little things that people were doing that they couldn't openly say, but kind of giving a sexy nod to the resistance, so to speak. Any other thoughts before we end?
Not really. FIFA sucks and always has done. You know? So, like, you know.
And because we didn't give a glowing review of FIFA on like many channels, is why we are suppressed in the algorithm. So if you want to support us, just so we get boosted a little bit, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat and live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up. You can also give on Substack, Patreon, Cash App, or Substack, Patreon, Cash App. Forgot the last one. But those all of them are in the description below. As always, if you can't support us financially, that's okay. The free way is to like, share,
there you go,
and leave a comment on our clips. So let us know, did you watch any of the FIFA, any of the World Cup? Did you notice any of these nuggets of resistance that you saw among the teams/players? Were you even aware of like the underlying stuff that was happening with certain teams, Iran in particular? I think that was mentioned in mainstream press that they couldn't stay in the country if they weren't playing. Let us know in the comments. And now let's get to 5K, so we're able to reach our network out to more people. And thanks for watching.
Cool.
Then you put the whole thing on cable TV. The Violence Network, VNN.
What? Well, before we get to that, chat, how you holding up? I see someone's having fun with their Cash Patel account. I think Golden Monarch said that participants who went to FIFA games, who went directly to firm games with drones, that's surveillance for gotcha, sucker. Yeah, I mean, you look at how Cash Patel fucking was like, yeah, we surveilled and stopped all the bad guys. You know?
Right.
Cleared the previous leadership, corruption, new FIFA regime, awarded successive competitions to Qatar and US, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Yep. Makes sense to me. Whole new meaning to Moneyball. Yep. Correct. You've seen that film, correct, Collin? Everyone will tell you about Moneyball, the best baseball movie to have ever baseball movied. But politically neutral looks at sponsor brands per FIFA, e.g. Coca-Cola, Bank of America, and Kraken. Yep. Yeah. But I'm the best FBI director ever. That's what my mommy said. Yeah, dude, that dude's a fucking clown, man. Controlled by his Mossad, handler. So, anyway, you ready for our next one? I'm ready.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Collin, we've been talking about Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya for quite some time now. Still, like, in Israeli prisons. I think the last update was that, like, he was severely malnourished and signs of beating and torture from his lawyers. So par for the course for Israel's human rights record. I'm sure we'll add it to the list. But I found this letter that was written by his wife, Albina Abu Safiya, and I felt like it was worth reading. I hadn't seen anyone else cover it, so I figured we would, as sad as it will be to read. But bearing witness, our Kawashi put this out. So a message to the world from Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya's wife. As she watches Israel slowly murder her husband in plain sight, Albina Abu Safiya has this message for the world. So Albina writes that she's from Kazakhstan. Because of her deep love for her husband, she chose to live with him in Palestine and northern Gaza despite the extremely difficult circumstances. Hussam believed it was his duty to serve his people and his community. He was an outstanding pediatrician before becoming the hospital's director. For 3 years, Hussam received repeated threats from the Israeli military ordering him to evacuate the hospital, but he always refused because it was treating wounded children. One day, while they were at the hospital with their son Ibrahim, the hospital was struck. Ibrahim was killed before their eyes. We buried him with our own hands, and from that day on, I never saw Hussam smile again. Even so, he continued his humanitarian work. He treated injured children and patients, smiling at them despite his own pain. Then at the end of the day, he would return to his office and cry in silence. I kept begging him to leave, especially since we hold a foreign nationality, but he would always reply, "And leave them to whom? Who will treat their wounds?" I could never argue with such a noble heart. Then came the darkest day. The Israeli military entered the hospital after failing to force him to leave. Hussam tried to negotiate with them, asking them that the patients and medical staff be allowed to leave first. They agreed. After everyone had evacuated, they took him away, and we have not seen him since. More than a year has passed since his detention. His lawyer said that he has been subjected to beatings and humiliation, that his weight has dropped to less than 60 kilograms, and that he is suffering from malnutrition and anemia. His mother, who was deeply attached to him, died of a heart attack after hearing what had happened, without ever having the chance to say goodbye to her son. Today, my children and I live in our partially destroyed home, waiting for his return. We are waiting for the humanitarian doctor who refused to abandon his homeland and chose to remain beside the wounded and the children of Gaza. We place our trust in God and then in the conscience of free people around the world, believing that you will not leave Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya to face this alone. Albina Abu Safiya. Thoughts, Care Bear? I mean, I mainly brought it just to make sure it was here for perpetuity. You know what I mean? So, like, this is the kind of stuff that me, myself, you, Indy, we all remember this shit. So, you know, and I think people have wanted to forget.
Well, again, it's what we talked about in the first part of the stream before you lost power. Like the idea of, so I'll say it again, so at least you don't have to maybe clip and cut and paste.
Clip and edit and put it in.
Yeah, but the idea of universality and how people seemingly on the left can compartmentalize / prioritize other needs at the inclusion of others. So in this case, like I saw a lot of shitheads online, and yeah, I mean, online is not reality, but all the same, like a lot of people were like, oh, who gives a fuck about Gaza? You know, like no one cares about Gaza when we are hungry here, you know, like, or like, you know, like, oh, like my mom is dying of cancer. Why should I care about this sick baby? Like, in the global south, or name insert country here. You know, so it's the idea, if you're, in my mind, if you're a true leftist, you're going to have empathy for all, regardless of who they are or where they are, but simply just of the matter that they're a human being and they exist and that they have unalienable rights. You know, in the fact that they are human and here and existing. So I really dislike how, again, it's that kind of American. I'm not even sure if it's American, but maybe Western
Compartmentalization. Yeah.
In terms of, because we don't see them, we don't have that connection to them, that they're somehow easy to ignore or not being able to think about. And my take is, you can't claim that you care about needs here, whether you own those needs or not, and not care about others who desire the same thing. Like, to me, that just makes no sense at all. Yes, there should be a prioritization of people within your community. I totally get that. But you can do that and kind of think of the whole in addition to. Like, it's not an and or, you know, it's like yes and, you know, in my mind. So it's like,
Right.
if you care about Black people, you care about Palestinians. If you care about, I don't know, if you care about sick children, you care about the LGBTQ plus community. If you care about, you know, like your mom or someone in your family getting the health care they need, you should care about everybody fucking getting the care that they need. And
it's like, literally, Dr. Hussam here could have left.
Right.
He had the opportunity to leave, and he was like, "No, no one is going to be for these people. Like, I have to be here for these people." You know, like, you know, risked his life and is now imprisoned. Like, and my thing is that there's hundreds of Dr. Hussams in Israeli, like, being held hostage by the IDF right now. You know,
right.
Like, he's just one of the most, like, prominent examples. You know, this is a place with documented, like, systemic abuse, systemic sexual abuse, which we've covered here on this channel multiple times. Like, I don't know who has the power to do anything about this, but they need to start using it. You know, like,
well,
I'm
again, it's
disgusted.
a matter of, but again, it's a matter of privilege. Like,
yeah,
because in our mind, if they're not white or of means, you're disposable. Like, you don't have to care about those people. And like, and that's what makes me really upset when people who try to be adjacent to power kind of claim, oh, we don't need to care about insert community group / people group here because we have our own needs in this country. When ironically, I don't see any of these people caring for those people either.
yeah.
So, you know, you just talk from a screen. But as far as I know, you don't serve your community. You don't help anyone in your community. You know, you're either paid, or some of these sluts aren't getting paid. That's just worse. Like,
Uh-huh.
no, in my mind, if you're going to propagandize, like, make it count. Like,
right.
in my mind, like, it just kind of fascinates me that there are people who are willing to do that for free, just to say that they're in proximity of power. You know, like, not even getting true power, but just being adjacent to it is enough for these people, which is you're a political slut. You know, like, so, but, you know, but again, like, as Kwame said in the cold open, this is why the world hates this country, because we're so selfish to not think beyond our own needs. Now, granted, some of our needs, especially if you're working class, are legit. But we have to understand that your tax dollars are going to the destruction of these people, you know? And we got to be able, like, we are fortunate that we have a platform and we have a very tiny platform, but I think at least we try to kind of amplify these voices to help people be aware of that universality that should exist in this world. So, so I think it's just really a matter of, like, we're going to continue to do it as long as we both have the strength to do it. But as sad as it is, but again, the reality is that, we are in part to blame for what's going on.
Yeah.
Because we're not making a loud enough stink to tell our leaders and to really fight for it that what you're doing, what you're enabling in the global south is not okay. Not on our watch, and certainly not with my money.
No, I think it's going to require a lot more than just public pressure at this point, Right. Like, they've quit listening to that. They know they can just ignore it and it'll go away in another month. They'll put some distraction in front of people, and like, it's going to take, some red ink is going to have to get spilled, before things change. And I think that's dire consequences that I don't think people are ready to deal with yet,
Well, we talked about that. It's a lot harder for people to do that because that's your livelihood that you're risking.
Yeah, you're risking a lot.
You're risking finances. You're risking your health. You're risking your children. More importantly, you're risking your life.
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to give up your life for a greater cause in that way? I'll argue most of us are not. So until we get to the point of, like,
rock bottom,
extreme rock bottom, it's not happening. Like, I used to be so optimistic. You know this. Like, I used to be so optimistic of the revolution was going to come soon. And I'm like,
we're still a ways off.
We're rock bottom right now, but I'll argue we're close. And people are still kind of like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Like, we can deal with this. I'm like, I'd rather not, but all right. Like,
and if anything's going to be done, it's going to be done too late.
True.
But anyway, I definitely thought it was important to read this just as an update in general. So, make sure to share it with some people, and hopefully we can actually free Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. That'd be fantastic, as well as all the other hostages held by the IDF. Would be fantastic. And you know what?
You better say free Palestine.
You better do it. You better get to it. And doing so is why YouTube has shadow banned us completely. So if you would like to keep our lights on, you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, scan that QR code on your screen, and you can give us a few dollary dues without YouTube taking 30%. And otherwise, like and subscribe, help, comment on this video, let me know what you think, and help us get to 5K. I don't know where my sticky note went, but it's here somewhere, where it says 5K instead of 3K. But, like and subscribe, do all the things, and otherwise, thanks for watching. I gotta find my sticky note. Where's my sticky note? It's here somewhere. I know it is. There it is. I had to do this. Make sure to hit the pin on it so I don't lose it. Chat, you doing okay? Collin, I see more people fighting against flock cameras than I see people fighting corruption in politics. I mean, I think that might be more of a pertinent issue myself. I don't know what we could do about the corruption in politics. You know, just practice good OPSEC when dealing with slot cameras, you know? Like, do it from 80 miles away if possible. I don't know. Figure some stuff out, you know? But it's going to require a legion of Luigis, and we don't have that. Not yet, anyway, but wait till people get hungry enough. You know? That's when it's going to fucking happen.
You know what? I think that's right. And I think in a lot of ways, I feel the Republican Party in particular are very good at propagating that idea that, like,
yeah,
if we defeat, like, the other, then you will have the things that you want.
right.
And people believe. So they're able to kind of get away with it, thinking, having the masses kind of believe. And look, this is why I know Indy kind of talked about this, you know, in one of his clips last night. This is why they're targeting education in the way that they are, especially in the South, because they want people to be dumb. They want people to not. Well, I can make this argument even living here in DC.
Yeah.
Like, it's not much better in that regard. It's like the only difference is they want to train you well enough that you work for a corporation and be a mindless slave. Like, you can have some autonomy, but not too much, you know? So I can make the case, you know, where just education in general in the country, but I think especially in the South, it's all based on fear. It's based on the idea of, like, the others are taking your jobs. The others are preventing you from getting the money that you want, from the things that you deserve as a true patriot, and making it seem like, you know, like, it's people like me, it's gay people, it's women, it's trans people who are causing your life to struggle. If you get rid of them, you'll be just fine. And you know, and we know better than that's not true.
Well, and I think there are a bunch of people figuring out that it's like top versus down, not left versus right. And I think that's scary for the establishment, that that's already becoming a more popular, like, viewpoint, you know? But, like, we'll get to it in my next segment. Especially, they're trying to make it illegal to do that too. So, you know, they're going to call you a commie and lock you up, regardless of if you are or aren't. You know?
Well, no, it's not even me. It's like radical leftist.
Yes.
Like, that's what they're saying now. It's not even so much communist. It's radical. Those radical left idiots.
Yes.
Well, how dare they want universal health care? Like, yeah, I'm like, we should be so lucky. But but the story I'm going to report might be a good tie-in between the story I reported on earlier and then the story you're about to cover. Because the Pentagon is doing some shenanigans that, and I'm kind of surprised a lot of people are talking about this. I think a few channels have, but not to any significance. So we're going to talk about how the Pentagon is underreporting casualties in light of this war and underreporting death in terms of this war. So I'm going to Frankenstein this segment in using 3 articles.
Okay.
So the first one's from Truthout. Again, kind of connected to a little bit to World Cup, where Chris Walker writes, Trump celebrates during World Cup's final as CENTCOM announces U.S. soldier's death. The World Cup crowd booed and jeered at Trump as he walked onto the field at the conclusion of the match. So a lot of you probably saw that when Spain won, Trump, because he always needs to have attention, you know, went up and was all awkward and shit. And Spain players weren't having it.
They photoshopped him out, I think.
They did. Anyway, President Donald Trump took part in the celebrations following the conclusion of the FIFA World Cup final soccer match. just minutes after CENTCOM announced another U.S. fatality in the Middle East, the result of his illegal, unprovoked war in Iran. Trump, who appeared jubilant despite the large crowd booing and jeering him, showed up on the field alongside FIFA President Gianni Infantino after Spain's 1-0 victory over Argentina on Sunday. Handing off the FIFA World Cup trophy to the victorious players, Trump awkwardly remained on the stage and stayed there even after Infantino tried to direct him away. Later, the Spain soccer team's social media accounts appear to edit Trump out of their pictures, a notable snub to Trump, who has expressed anger towards their country's leaders over NATO spending and not for allowing the U.S. to use its airfields for the Iran war. Despite Trump's friendship with Infantino, the FIFA president presented Trump with a Peace Prize last year after he failed to win the Nobel Peace Prize. FIFA's social media also appeared to keep Trump out of his posted pictures of the winning team. Any hopes of a Peace Prize this year are likely dashed for Trump, given his decision to launch the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran in late February. He has continued waging that war despite no congressional approval for its continuation. About an hour before the conclusion of the World Cup match, and likely as Trump was preparing to take the field, CENTCOM announced that a U.S. service member was killed in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone over the weekend. That announcement was preceded by the announcement that 2 other service members had been killed in Jordan in an attack on Friday. At least 17 U.S. service members have been killed in the Middle East since the war began. On Monday, the New York Times also reported that the Pentagon has been withholding reports of other U.S. casualties, including dozens of injuries, and has downplayed attacks from Iran. The recent deaths and recently revealed casualties come as a memorandum of understanding, a temporary ceasefire agreement between Iran and the U.S., appears to have completely deteriorated, with Iran indicating that it is presently suspended. At multiple junctures during the war, Trump has claimed that Iran's military capabilities have been nearly decimated, only for reports such as these later demonstrating that his assessments have been incorrect. Iranian authorities say that at least 50 people in Iran have been killed by U.S. airstrikes this month, as tensions between the two countries has escalated in recent weeks. Another 500 individuals have been wounded, those authorities added. If accurate, the total number of Iranians killed during the war would be around 3,500 people, with around 21,000 injured, though exact figures are unknown. So, as I said, and Sharon Zhang is going to get into this in the next article, and I'm going to I will get into it. So, coming off of that, Sharon Zhang from Truthout reports that Pentagon slashed civilian harm reduction staff and is instead using AI. CENTCOM, which oversees the war with Iran, has had its civilian harm reduction team slashed from 10 people to just 1. So Sharon reports, in his first year under Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon dramatically slashed its teams responsible for taking efforts to reduce civilian harm in military conflicts, new reporting finds, an undertaking that continued until as little as months before the U.S. bombed an elementary school in Manav, Iran, in one of the worst single incidents of a civilian massacre committed by the U.S. in modern history. As reported on the cuts to civilian harm reduction staff reported by the finds that between January 2020 and the end of the year, the Pentagon's Civilian Protection Center of Excellence was slashed from 40 to just 9. In that time, the Pentagon also stopped developing a database that would have helped track incidents where civilians were harmed by U.S. actions. These slashes to civilian harm mitigation and response, abbreviated as CMRHR, were done across the Department of Defense. For instance, such staff at Central Command, CENTCOM, which directs military activity in the Middle East, were cut from 10 to 1. When UK watchdog group Air Wars tried to submit documentation of civilian casualties to Southern Command, Southcom, which has directed the U.S. boat strike campaign in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, the group was told that the command did not have the infrastructure to deal with such reports. When it comes to the Manab massacre, in which the U.S. killed over 150 people with a Tomahawk missile, including over 100 children, those left at the Civilian Protection Center of Excellence aren't even allowed to investigate the incident, as well as other major incidences with civilian casualties, the report said. Wes Bryant, who formerly oversaw the Center's civilian harm assessments, told The Intercept that the remaining staff have only been retained so that the department can keep up appearances, and that their findings are being thrown into the wind. The reporting follows others that have found that the Trump administration sought to shutter the office before Donald Trump was even inaugurated in January 2025. Since then, Hegseth has made his vow to ignore what he calls stupid rules of engagement, a central tenet of his identity as the military's top official, and numerous scandals regarding civilian harm done by the U.S. have followed, including in the boat strike campaign, strikes on Yemen, and in the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is trying to replace some of the duties of its civilian harm reduction mitigation staff with AI. The Intercept. Military service members are instead using AI systems like Palantir's Maven Smart System, as well as the military's Ask Sage, to conduct assessments of the civilian environment. This lines up with reports that service members used AI to help select the elementary school in Manab as a target and bypassed warnings about faulty targeting in order to expedite strikes at the beginning of the war. So a lot of this you've reported on quite a bit in recent months, given AI and the use of it. Any thoughts?
Well, almost as much as my complaining about the use of the Intercept. Almost as many times. But yeah, no, for sure. Like they got it. This is like that imperial boomerang going back and forth between the two imperial genociders. Like we give the technology to Israel so they can try it out in a small test group, and then we use it here.
Right.
And back and forth and forth and back and forth and chicken and egg and chicken and egg. Like it's like they're part of the same entity now. It's not even, as we recently are trying to vote on to make sure that our militaries are the same entity. So, what else is new? You have this from Common Dreams.
Yep. This is written by Stephen Prager, where he reports Pentagon has been hiding reports on soldiers injured during Trump's illegal Iran war. This report comes as Trump considers a wider war, including a ground invasion that could require hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops. Oh, well, you better be careful with that. Mm-hmm. So, after months of downplaying the number of American casualties from President Donald Trump's war in Iran, the New York Times revealed that the Pentagon once again hid dozens of U.S. military injuries from Iranian strikes on bases in Jordan last week. As the Times reported on Monday, in the week leading up to the Iranian attack on Friday that killed 2 U.S. soldiers and left 1 service member missing in Jordan, Iran carried out 3 other strikes against U.S. forces in the country. Those attacks injured dozens of U.S. service members and damaged several helicopters, according to several U.S. officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss operational matters. But the Pentagon did not disclose the earlier strikes, nor the casualties and damage they inflicted. The Pentagon's failure to disclose full information about U.S. casualties is not a new development. In the early days of war, Defense Department officials said fewer than a dozen American troops had been injured before abruptly acknowledging that more than 140 had been wounded after Reuters obtained the full figures. After 6 American soldiers were killed during the war's opening salvo, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth derided the press inquiries about the number of casualties, claiming that they were only seeking to make the president look bad. The intercepts Nick Turse found in April that CENTCOM had repeatedly sent outdated and incomplete casualty figures to journalists in what one defense official referred to as a casualty cover-up. As of April 1st, Turse reported that more than 520 U.S. troops had been injured, including more than 200 soldiers being treated for smoke inhalation without acknowledgement from the government. Last week, prior to the deaths of the two U.S. soldiers in Jordan, CENTCOM said that a total of 414 service members had been injured since the war began, mostly from traumatic and brain injuries. In total, 17 U.S. personnel have now been killed, according to official report counts. CENTCOM spokesperson Major Emma Thompson said last week that she had no update on how many troops were seriously wounded, but claimed that almost all of those injured have returned to duty. She also did not say how many troops have been wounded enough to be evacuated from the region. The Times reported that CENTCOM is not required to disclose information about injured U.S. service members publicly, and one military official argued that doing so would provide Iran with free information that would leave the U.S. vulnerable to further attacks. However, it does speak to the Trump administration's ever-growing secrecy as it threatens to dramatically expand the unpopular conflict. At the Times noted, the Pentagon has provided little information about the war in recent months, and the last major press briefing on the war took place in early May. The administration has also blown past its initial promises to end its operation against Iran in a matter of weeks and avoid a forever war. The conflict is now entering its fifth month with no end in sight. The Washington Post and Wall Street Journal reported this weekend that in an effort to break Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz, where it began to restrict travel in response to U.S.-Israeli war, Trump is planning a wider war that may include a possible ground invasion of Kark Island and other Iranian territory along the strait. Experts have estimated that efforts to capture and occupy Iran's coastline would likely require hundreds of thousands of troops, which would explain. Go ahead.
Well, I'm only here to brag that I beat the WAPO and Wall Street, two fucking capitalist rags, about the reporting of Kark Island, which I covered months and months and months ago. You know, like we knew that was the wider war. We know what's going on. We know what's happening.
But one thing that they didn't mention now, they probably did not get this at the time of publishing, but the administration is asking Congress for, because they're saying we need more troops down there, ergo, we need more money in there. So basically, the argument in Congress right now is we thought you said that this war is done, so why are you asking us for more money?
Mm-hmm.
And
that they just voted for, I thought, in the House, right?
I believe so. I haven't been watching it that closely, I will admit, but it's still the idea of Trump, this war is over. We won, and Iran is giving we mollywopped Iran. Also, Trump, we need more money in there. So so it's very obvious that Iran is giving Trump things to worry about, because he now has to try and save face in terms of not looking at it in terms of seemingly having a forever war, which would affect him in terms, but especially if he is requiring to have, or the administration is requiring to get more troops in there in a war that's very unpopular. So I'm sure that's going to lead into your next story in terms of they know this bullshit that they put themselves into right now. So instead of trying to fix that, or kind of doing the right thing to kind of walk away from it, now they're blaming the radical left, I mean, part of the playbook, that are blaming the radical left for bullshit, essentially.
Yep. Same old shit. You know. I mean, slightly different players involved, but seems about right. I mean, this is all like resource wars and shit. That's what we're in. You know? So, people will figure it out eventually. Anything else you got?
No,
Cool.
we got it.
Nope. You're up.
Oh, sorry. So reporting on stories like these that are not popular is why we're suppressed in the algorithm. So if you want to support us, scan the QR code, or you can type in the Ko-fi link you see on your screen. If you're in the YouTube chat and live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up, and you can click it and give as little as much as you can if you want to support us. If you can't support us financially, that's okay. The easiest and free way is to like, subscribe, and share our content when we clip this out. And we help us get to 5K, so hopefully more of you are able to watch our content. And thanks for watching.
Cool. All right. Once they enact that law, the USA is dead. I mean, I can't imagine the Senate is going to vote for the poor and masses, so yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to get to our next one. Because you were already talking about the implications. Collin, they're coming after us commies again. They're doing it again. They're rounding up, you know, they're what was it? Paul Robeson, right? Like we've talked about his, you know, all that like McCarthyite, you know, trials and whatnot, right? Well, they're at it again. So this is from Patrick Lawrence over at The Flautist. And this is a paid article from him, but the actual like preview he gave, I felt like was a pretty good like intro. So I linked it in the doobly-doo if people want to go look at it. And subscribe to Patrick, but he writes, crushing radical left terrorism. What does the Trump regime's new offensive tell us about this moment in the American story? So, 21st of July, I do not know what we should call the Trump regime's new offensive against extreme violence from the political left, also known as far left terrorism, also known as left-wing terrorist attacks and plots, also known as a new wave of this old evil. I suppose we could start with offensive, as in a offensive. But let us expand the vocabulary in the cause of understanding Trump administration unleashes global campaign to crush radical left terrorism. The White House document that announced its offensive last Thursday. Patrick, are you trying to tongue twister me? Twister the tongues of the tongue twistering? God. The above cited phrases belong to Marco Rubio, who addressed 70 and some senior ministers at the State Department as the White House went public with its latest operation against its political opponents. Because the fight against this recrudescent specter is a global fight, you see, under President Trump, as the White House release explains, radical left terrorism is finally being confronted as the organized, transnational threat it actually is. Transnational means, guess who they're targeting with that? You know, pick some other nations that we don't want influencing here, allegedly. So, let's see. Straight off the top, this just declared operation is stunningly paranoid, and Patrick doesn't see this as any arguing. Maybe you have to be a certain age to recognize its retrograde character, reeking as it does of the delusionary swoon J. Edgar Hoover sponsored in the 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s, when the FBI's infamous COINTELPRO programs fell apart on exposure to the light of day, as Kash Patel instantly made clear as Rubio spoke, he cannot wait to be the next Hoover. Given the cross-dressing director's place in history, this is a weird aspiration. Based on National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, which we've talked about on this show, wherein Trump declared a whole-of-government offensive against, quote, domestic terrorism of the, quote, left-wing kind. Of course, this latest declaration of war is intended to identify, disrupt, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute these political terrorists operating in our country. As Stephen Miller, Trump's domestic policy advisor, puts it, so we can add dangerous to our descriptors. If the going gets as heavy as COINTELPRO was at its worst, this new iteration could so prove. So, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of this formal declaration of authoritarianism. On the nitty side, it is plain from the White House document and Rubio's presentation of it that the Trump regime is in the grip of a creeping desperation. The victories of social democrats of various stripes in recent elections have Trump calling them all communists. Beyond this, it is evident that the American public opinion is tilting, measurably now, leftward towards a populism that is genuinely populist. Anxiety in the upper reaches of power tips into fear. As to the gritty...
So, again,
yes.
Go ahead. You can finish that article and finish that part now.
As to the gritty, this latest aggression against all of us, no exceptions, is simply too stupid to work. The broadly stated intention seems to be just as Hoover's and McCarthy's 7 and some decades ago, to make sure America remains the most right-wing nation in the West, which is to say, more or less in the world. Patrick does not see this succeeding. As a reading of our time, the campaign to crush radical left terrorism seems to be as dumb, on the way to laughable, were it not so potentially disruptive. As an attempt at apple pie fascism, it is likely to make a mess, depending on how vigorous the regime presses its case, but the net of it will be the further alienation of power from people. So, you were saying?
So it kind of goes to show that Republicans know that they're fucked.
Yeah.
Because they know that their policies that they've enacted over the last year and change have not been popular.
Yeah.
So, because if they were, you would hear them mentioning that ad nauseum, like during press conference. Oh, look what we're able to accomplish with the big beautiful. You've noticed that, like, once they implemented that bullshit, they never talked about it because they knew afterward that this is actually bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
well, who else didn't talk about it either? Because they could easily make it their campaign promises too, and they won't.
Exactly.
So
that's the first thing. The other thing is, I feel I kind of disagree with the idea that people are not going to fall for it. Like, our audience isn't.
No.
Like, people who are kind of in this space, even in the most shittiest live, aren't going to fall for it. But, like, I wouldn't say the majority, but there's going to be a decent number of people who do not watch independent media that get their news, if at all, from mainstream resources, like, will believe it because that's all they listen to. That's all they listen to or watch or have on the background, like, all the time as they eat dinner. And again, it's that propaganda that works, that blame the other person. Like, it's easier to blame the other person as the scapegoat for their issues.
Yep.
Instead of marking themselves as, no, we've actually fucked up. So I feel like it's going to work on enough people to make a difference, I believe.
Well,
I think people who are kind of in the know, even on a level, I'm not talking about us who I think you're more inundated in the space than me at this point. But like, even I kind of know, like, you know, like people are falling for the hokey doke. In the, but yeah,
Yeah. Well,
but no, not going to be enough in my mind in retrospect of people who are going through it who are still going to believe the propaganda.
yeah. I don't know. I think what the Republicans did was they ruined it by calling everything communist that isn't. You know, like that to me is at least a lot of the public now is much more understanding of what it actually is than previously.
Right.
You know?
Right. But again, who votes more often than not? It's the
for
old
sure.
people. So,
yeah, I just don't think
like,
this is in regards to voting. This is in regards to outside factors. You know?
Like the youth may not necessarily and look, the reality is like moving forward. So it can work. So to your point, it can work now, like during the boomer generation in particular. But after that, within the next decade and change, it's not going to hit as hard anymore. Especially like if things don't improve within the next 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Because by then you're going to come to Gen X and millennials who are a little more, I wouldn't say more intelligent, but are a little more in the know in terms of these terms and what they actually mean.
Yeah.
And are a little, now I will argue, would be a little more resistant to the bullshit that's happening now in general. Yeah. And they're going to push back hard against this idea. So, hopefully. But that's what I mean in terms of there are going to be some people. When I say some people, I generally mean the boomer generation who will kind of go along with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of understand the propaganda they were fed.
I mean,
you know, as they
plenty
were
of that too. Every movie and video game, it's always the Russians. It's always, you know, it's like this classic thing of you know, like commie-phobia, you know.
Right.
So guess where Marco Rubio's blaming it on? Speaking of communist countries,
Cuba.
Because of course. So I think it's just daddy issues for him, right? In the how this works. But the new Red Scare targeting leftists, blaming Cuba for civil rights in the U.S. This is by Arturo Dominguez, who writes, "The U.S. wants you to believe that Cuba is responsible for decades of civil rights and anti-war movements, while most Democrats remain silent on the new McCarthyism." So, and he put this photo as like first and foremost in this article.
Oh, God.
And this is a billboard located about 2 miles from the entrance of Fort Bragg near Fayetteville, North Carolina in 1969. Okay, that is not that long ago, friends. Like, that this was openly publicized billboard, you know? And what does it say right here at the bottom? That what does the Klan want you to do? Help fight integration and communism. Okay, just making sure people understood where a lot of this is coming from. But in the early, mid-20th century, many hate groups, such as the Ku Klux Klan and supporters of Jim Crow laws, would associate everything they hated with communism, including, but not limited to, integration and giving non-white people equal rights. Nearly a century later, not much has changed. A new report from the U.S. Department of State that labels nearly all the progress the U.S. has seen since the abolition of slavery as a devious communist plot operating from Cuba. The report serves as a perfect example of how ingrained this racist ideology is. The report not only diminishes the rights black people fought for, but it posts that those civil rights movements weren't justified, that without Cuba's influence, black people, indigenous people, other non-white people, women, and other marginalized groups would have accepted their fate of being treated as lesser when it came to participation in the government of the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, expecting to be taken seriously while acting if an island of just 10 million people has so much influence in the world is a serious delusion. Quote, the Cubans devoted themselves to recruiting, cultivating, and mobilizing a global coalition of activists, intellectuals, God forbid we have some of those, and political groups around this cause, building a sprawling, revolutionary network that shaped a disproportionate share of America's most famous and influential extremist movement, from the Black Panthers and the Weather Underground through to Antifa, reads the Department of State report. Today, that network continues to maintain ties to powerful leftist nonprofits, anti-ICE collectives, socialist groups, and Marxist militant organizations across the United States. Are the Marxist militant organizations in the room with you, Marco? Are they in the room with you? I'd love to see them, you know? I'd love to see them. The reports also went so far as to vilify some of the most prominent voices in the civil rights movement, such as, but not limited to, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois, Amiri Bakara, and Robert Williams, among others. Do you remember at the top of the show I said he'd come up again? That's why. Yeah. So this is, if you listen to any of these people or ever have, to the gulag with you. Like, that's what I'm getting. If you've listened to any of these intellectual, quote unquotes, those rabble-rousing intellectuals, God forbid. Like, so as nothing more than communist sympathizers, thus diminishing their work. While some were communists, their work was simply humanitarian, as noted by their successes. Efforts to disassociate the named activists from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. should be noted, the State Department portraying them as outsiders who were influenced by Cuba in a moment that represented a broad coalition of voices, including liberals and conservatives, is a disingenuous rewriting of history. Many of the most significant upheavals in recent American political history, from the George Floyd riots to the rise of Antifa to the expulsion of pro-terrorist activism on American college campuses, can be linked in some way, shape, or form to Cuban influence, the report reads. It should also be noted that Latino movements such as the Young Lords Party and United Farm Works movement were not mentioned by name. The Young Lords were referred to only as the Puerto Rico Militant. The omission exposes an overall anti-black narrative of the report, seemingly trying to build on a divide between some Latinos and black voters. It harkens back to the days of the aforementioned Ku Klux Klan opposing equal rights and dishonestly associating the black struggle with communism to reach a broader U.S. audience. The report then talked about terrorist attacks across the hemisphere, including in the U.S., that were connected in some way to Cuba. It ignores the attacks in the U.S. were committed by disgruntled CIA-trained anti-Castro operatives who had been excommunicated for going against the U.S. wishes and conducting operations after being told to stand down. The attacks targeted Cuban Americans who spoke out in favor of diplomacy with the island instead of war, violence, or suffering imposed by brutal U.S. sanctions. The report also omits the deep history of U.S.-backed terrorist attacks on Cuba, including the bombing of a Cuban airliner in 1976. But Cuba's plans for the United States were far more it's serious voice, right? Were more ambitious than periodic bouts of urban unrest. Over the next 2 decades, violent guerrilla insurgencies and deadly terrorist campaigns would sweep across the Western Hemisphere, reads the State Department report. Almost all of them were connected in some way to a small island nation nearly 90 miles south of the Florida coast. Also named are various U.S. lawmakers, social media influencers, individuals, and nonprofits that are critical of U.S. foreign policy, like the Humanity Express for Palestinians being used as a weapon against people. The report applies a similar strategy against anyone refusing to accept the imposition of suffering and starvation of millions of Cubans. Essentially, the report, in conjunction with the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, which I think they made it that kind of ridiculous name so that people wouldn't remember it. You know, otherwise they would have called it the Liberty Memorandum or whatever, you know? Like,
Sure.
says that anyone can be considered an enemy if they're not a U.S. President Donald Trump sycophant. The report mentions popular uprisings in places such as Uruguay, Argentina, and Nicaragua that Cuba backed, but it left out why those revolutions were so popular. In Uruguay, for example, the U.S.-backed president was a participant in Operation Condor, a U.S.-funded campaign of political repression by right-wing dictatorships in South America. The uprisings in Uruguay, while ultimately crushed, were motivated by this brutal repression. The campaign results in hundreds of opposition voices being disappeared through cross-border agreements among governments. Similarly, after the overthrow of the U.S.-backed Nicaraguan dictatorship of Anastasio Somoza, the United States immediately got involved to try to undermine the popular movement there, as it has in various countries in the region. This led to then-President Ronald Reagan launching a counterinsurgency known as the Contras, which became the subject of a vast conspiracy known as the Iran-Contra scandal. The scandal included flooding U.S. streets with drugs and secretly funding weapons to Iran to help fund the counter-revolution in Nicaragua. Enter Third Worldism, a phrase from the 1960s that was a legitimate movement focused on anti-imperialism and sovereign development, allowing for the distribution of wealth to the global south rather than to already wealthy nations. The term has not been used in a broader sense in decades, highlighting how the State Department has to go back half a century to make its argument using publicly available information that hasn't been relevant since. As legacy media jumps all over this report as if it isn't yet another pretext for the war, the United States is currently weighing its military options to attack Cuba and what is rumored to be July 26, Cuba's National Rebellion Day. The day signifies a turning point in the revolution, celebrating the day Fidel Castro led an attack on the Moncada barracks in 1953, when the military attack failed and most of the 130 rebels were either jailed or killed. The raid solidified widespread public resistance to U.S.-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista's regime. Meanwhile, as the Trump administration built on its campaign to silence so-called leftists, and since so many centrist liberals are also on the attack against progressives, the silence from the broader Democratic Party must be noted. When the consultant class of the party has lawmakers and candidates focused on people like, insert name here, of Standard Op, they seem to be willingly joining forces with the white Christian nationalists bulldozing fascism across the country rather than listening to voters and offering popular policy ideas like the progressives they're attacking have done. A report about Cuba that attempts to link communism to all the progress the United States has seen since the abolition of slavery and mentions black people and black liberation movements, that is, the civil rights we all benefit from, 118 times in just 99 pages, is telling. Cuban-American hardliners promoting this as a legitimate report is not surprising, just as Rubio bringing white nationalism to the State Department wasn't. However, this move highlights how domestic and foreign policy intersect. The narrative isn't new, it's being rehashed to justify war with Cuba, as the white Christian nationalists in the White House target a major portion of the country and label them as the enemy. Support for all of this seems bipartisan, with very few exceptions. The claims made in the report use dubious hyperbolic connections that are not corroborated by any of the references provided. Instead, they are made using far-fetched ideas built off 67 years of U.S. propaganda that doesn't make any sense and was probably plugged through some government AI to spit out. Collin, any thoughts?
I mean, not really, but I feel again like we kind of went through this ad nauseum. But again, it goes to the idea of like Republicans have nothing to kind of show for the work that, ironically, they know what they're doing is not benefiting their base at all. So that again, they're turning to the other in our case, like anyone seemingly to the left, that God forbid that they want a little more equity in terms of our policies to actually help benefit people, or we can't have that. But now that, especially given that this is Marco Rubio's pet project regarding Cuba, and given its history, you know, like, not even so much history, like, even today, like, I think I said this to you, like, when I was visiting my dad in Barbados a few years ago. Like, I met a few people who studied in Cuba, you know, from Barbados. And they were saying to me, oh, like, this was a great opportunity for them because, you know, like, they were able to learn medicine and all this kind of stuff over there. That would have been, that in a lot of ways was better than if they were to be educated in the UK or even in the US. So, but given Cuba's history of resistance, I would say, and I think in a lot of ways Cuba is being used as a scapegoat because, you know, a lot of prominent figures within the civil rights movement have ended up in Cuba or have spent some time in Cuba in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So, so yes, in that regard. So given those names, because those names like Kwame Ture, X, you know, and others were considered radicals at the time, you know, so, you know, but I feel like in some ways too, like if the GOP is kind of labeling us as them, I'm like, thank you.
Right.
I want to be in that company. And I think that's the fear, is because, again, people are reading, people are understanding a lot more now of the significance of these people, because even with people like at Malcolm X, like, we were kind of taught that, oh, he was extreme,
Right.
you know, and I think now a lot of people are now, it's like, no, he actually wasn't. If anything, you know, so like, so I think people are able to have more nuance now and kind of see for the propaganda, like, and that's what's scaring this the elites, because they realize, oh shit, like if it might become a renaissance of the civil rights movement in some ways if we don't clamp this down now. Like, and it would be a lot more effective if, but so it kind of, in that sense, it kind of frustrates me. And we were talking about this earlier before we went live, that it just seems right now, this is prime time to have these conversations about organizing. Because I think now the establishment is legit scared. Both sides are scared because,
well, they're going after
social Democrats aside, I don't give a fuck. But like, this is prime time to have these conversations and to strategize as to how can we be effective now in this time when people are more open to having more socialist policies that actually are beneficial. So like, but instead we're playing these polititainment games and like all these beefs and fights and whatnot that are kind of distracting us from having these conversations. So, but all that to say is that the establishment is scared. So instead of kind of giving in and being like, okay, we'll scream uncle, like, let's actually do stuff for people, they're now kind of blaming us and and I'm going to list the global south in general, of having seemingly more, I would argue, more progressive policies that people are looking to and like, oh, we want that here. And they're not for, like, the establishment's not for it. So it's bad. And I think in a lot of ways we have to blame, because instead of being focused on doing the things that we should be doing, we're being stupid and worrying and pointing about like this political commentator said this, or this political commentator doing that, when we should be stepping away from all of them and really figuring out, okay, how can we capitalize on this moment to bring people together, to do mutual aid, to do the things necessary to make ourselves viable, that there could be, and I'm not saying there would be, but there's a possibility at minimum of some type of direct action taking place in this country.
Well, you look at, I mean, this coincides with what we talked about in regards to like Keith McHenry and Food Not Bombs, how they've labeled them somehow domestic terrorists and tried to infiltrate them. At some point, they need to bring Keith on and talk about it with him. Maybe that's what I do in the next couple of weeks. But and this recent stuff with, you know, Trump put out about China influencing our elections and, you know, all that. Like, this is all, it's literally McCarthyism from the right. We already had it with the left with Russiagate. We're going to have it again with the right. And then when the left gets in there, they'll go, we're strong, we'll take care of it. We're going to be hawkish on it, blah, 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 you know, to try to appeal to some voter that doesn't exist. Like, I can already see the narrative forming. So,
yeah,
you know, and this is essentially like a warning. Like, we have to be careful, you know, like right now it's either like they might start arresting people for their viewpoints, you know, like that's what I'm worried about. And like, that's what I'm being able to directly save our, you know, brothers and sisters in the movements. Like that's where the war chest needs to be secured at, you know? So
right.
Anyway, but talking about it is certainly why YouTube won't, you know, help us out in the algorithm department. So if you would like to donate to us and, you know, not let YouTube take 30% of your money, you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen. Links are always in the description as well. But like, you know, if you don't want to just like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think, or, you know, are you as worried as I am, and help us get to 5K. And anyways, thanks for watching. We did it.
We did it.
Yay, we did it. And I'm sure all these videos will be used as evidence in our trial when when we're thrown in the clink. You know, they'll be like, and on episode 205 of, you know, Iron and News, I'm like, yep, I did. It was a good show. I stand by it, you know? So, anyway. Well, chat, how you holding up? Kieran Pine, push to shove. Liberals will always side with conservatives, for liberals are merely the left cheek of a totalitarian ass. Correct. Bad cookies. They know all that, but they can't seem to investigate Epstein Island properly, huh? Yep.
Right.
How dare you watch historical videos? The nerve for you to educate yourself on historical speakers. Yep. It's just integration of who, Reef? Whom do you think they speak of? Well, the Klan was worried about people with melanin. And anyone that wasn't white. But anyway, well, coming up this week on INN, let me pull up our lovely calendar, which I will link for people in chat. You can always look at our calendar, see when it gets updated, and see what you might have missed. Clips and live streams and all that jazz. So here are some of the clips we put out. If you missed them, you can go check that out. Here's INN News, episode 205. You got Angel and Friends and Pro Wrestling on Fridays and Saturday, right? I don't think Indy's doing anything Thursday tomorrow, but, you know, there'll be a Rumble-only boats Sunday if things go well. And, Tuesdays you'll have Indie News Now. You can go check out Indie over there. And go check out last night's if you missed it. Links are in the link provided in chat. Anything else, Collin? Am I missing anything?
No, just those of you who came at the beginning, but you got cut out. We're going on a little break for at least live for the next 2 weeks. So we'll be back. Let me just get the date. We'll be back live on the 12th, August 12th. So Reef has a choice to do whatever he wants for the next 2 weeks if he chooses to.
Yeah, I'll reach out to some people. I think some interviews would be good for me to do.
So yeah, we'll be back. I'm going on vacation for really technically a week, but it falls on 2 Wednesdays. So, but yeah, hope you guys have fun over the next couple of weeks. We'll put out, as usual, some content from these clips and then a backlog of clips from last week that still need to go out. So yeah, so just continue to watch us. We thank you. You guys have been killing it with the subscribing. We've been growing steadily, so we really appreciate that. So but yeah, thank you guys. And we'll miss you, but we'll see you soon.
Yeah. All right. Remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.